I left my family after they said I ruined their lives, but this morning I found missed calls from. I was never the favorite. That title belonged to my sister, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. No matter how cruel she was, no matter how much she got away with, my mother adored her. And me? I was just there, an afterthought, a shadow in my own home. It had always been this way. Growing up, I learned quickly that my opinions didn't matter. My dreams weren't important. My feelings were either ignored or ridiculed. When my sister failed a test, it was my fault for distracting her. When she lost a friend, I was probably the reason. When she broke something, I must have pushed her into it. And my mother? She believed her. Every single time. Still, I tried. I tried so hard to be the perfect daughter. I worked hard, got good grades, kept quiet when they insulted me. I never lashed out, never fought back. I thought, maybe if I just prove my worth, they'll finally love me the way they love her. But nothing changed. Then came the night it all fell apart. It started with an argument. Well, they were arguing. I was just standing there, letting them yell. My sister had flunked a class, and instead of taking responsibility, she blamed me. Again, I don't even remember the excuse she used. Maybe she said I stressed her out just by existing. But what I do remember, crystal clear, were the words that followed. "You've ruined our lives," she screamed at me, her voice shaking with rage. And before I even had a chance to react, "We'd be happier without you." My mother's voice. Cold. Unapologetic. Final. I stood there, completely frozen. They weren't just angry. They weren't just venting. They meant it. And that was the moment that broke me. I didn't cry. I didn't beg them to take it back. I just nodded. Then, I turned around, walked to my room, and grabbed a backpack. I stuffed in whatever I could fit. My hands weren't even shaking. I wasn't scared or sad or angry. I was empty. And the most telling part? They didn't stop me. They didn't even watch me leave. And just like that, I was gone. I stepped out into the night, the weight of my backpack pressing against my shoulders, nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest. I walked without a destination, just putting distance between me and the place I had never truly called home. It was cold. I remember that vividly. The air bit at my skin, but I didn't shiver. I was numb. I had always thought that leaving would feel dramatic, like in the movies, maybe with tears streaming down my face or a last lingering look at the home I was abandoning. But there was none of that. No one ran after me. No one called my name. No one cared that I had nowhere to go. I had no plan. No safety net. My savings were laughable, just a few $100s I had secretly stashed away from tutoring gigs. But I knew one thing for sure. I would never go back. That night, I found a cheap motel on the edge of town. The kind of place with flickering neon signs and carpet that smelled like cigarette smoke. I paid for a single room with shaky hands and sat on the bed, staring at the peeling wallpaper. And for the first time that night, the realization hit me. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. And yet, for some reason, the thought didn't scare me as much as it should have. Because for the first time in my life, I was free. Sitting in that motel room, I knew one thing. No one was coming to save me. I had no degree. No real connections. Barely any money. But I had one advantage. I had spent my entire life being ignored and underestimated. No one had ever handed me anything. So I knew that if I was going to make it, I'd have to build something from nothing. So I started with what I knew. Studying. It sounded ridiculous at the time, but I had always been good at school. I had spent years excelling in my classes, tutoring other kids, helping people understand complex subjects. Maybe, just maybe, I could turn that into something. The next day, I walked into a tiny cafe, ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu, and used their free Wi-Fi to apply for every online tutoring gig I could find. At first, it was barely enough to survive. I lived off instant noodles and dollar store groceries. I rented a room in a shared apartment with 3 strangers who barely acknowledged my existence. But you know what? It was still better than where I had come from. Because every day, I woke up knowing that. No one would scream at me. No one would blame me for their failures. No one would tell me I was ruining their lives. And that was enough. The months passed. My tutoring gigs grew. 1 client turned into 3. 3 turned into 10. Soon, I was making enough to move into a tiny studio apartment. Barely more than a box, but it was mine. And through it all, my family never called. Not on my birthday. Not on holidays. Not even to check if I was alive. And that should have hurt. But instead, it just proved what I had always known. They had never really cared about me. And that was fine, because I didn't need them anymore. A year into my new life, things changed. By then, I had built up a reputation as a tutor, specializing in college entrance exams. Students from all over the country were reaching out to me, desperate for help. But I knew something. I was still trading time for money. And that wasn't sustainable. That's when I had an idea. What if I turned my lessons into something bigger? Something scalable? I spent months studying digital marketing, hours watching free YouTube content, days reading every article I could find. And then I did it. I created my own online course. I poured every spare dollar I had into designing the course, building a website, running ads. At first, sales trickled in. One here, two there. Then, something shifted. Word of mouth spread. Students raved about my methods, shared them online. And then, almost overnight, it exploded. Within months, I was making more than I had ever dreamed possible. I moved into a high-rise apartment, the kind I used to dream about. I traveled. I met people who actually respected me. I had built myself from nothing. And my family, they were nowhere to be found. Until this morning, when my phone buzzed, and everything changed. I barely glanced at my phone when it buzzed. At this point, notifications were just background noise. Emails, students asking about lessons, business opportunities. But something about the number of missed calls made me pause. Mom, 6 missed calls. Sister, 8 missed calls. I stared at the screen, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. After all this time, after they had made it so clear they wanted nothing to do with me, the last words my mother had said to me were, "We'd be happier without you." And now, suddenly, she needed me? I let out a slow breath. I wasn't the same person they had abandoned. I wasn't their punching bag anymore. Whatever they wanted, it wasn't going to be an apology. And I had no intention of making this easy for them. I sat there, staring at the screen for what felt like hours, but in reality, it was only a few minutes. Then, the phone rang again. I almost declined it, almost let it ring out like the others. But then, at the last second, I picked up. Hello. For a moment, there was silence on the other end. Then, a voice I hadn't heard in over a year. "Sweetie, please. We need to talk." My mother. Sweetie. She hadn't called me that in years. The fake tenderness stung more than if she had just yelled at me. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice neutral. Another pause. Then, a shaky breath. We've fallen on hard times." I stayed silent. "Your sister, she's been having trouble at school again. And with everything going on, we just don't have enough." Her voice cracked. "We need your help." And there it was. I bit my lip, trying to control the mix of satisfaction and rage bubbling inside me. This was why they were calling. Not to check in. Not to apologize. Not because they missed me. They needed money. I exhaled, my grip tightening on the phone. "What kind of help?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Another pause. Then, she blurted it out. "We need money. Of course. Your sister's tuition is due, and we have bills we can't pay. I know we've never been there for you, but please. We're struggling. We need you to help us." Her voice trembled, but I couldn't tell if it was guilt or desperation. "We know it's a lot to ask," she added quickly. "But please, we've tried everything." Then, softer. "Please." I heard her sniffle. Maybe it was genuine. Maybe it was just guilt trying to worm its way back in. But it didn't matter. "Please," she repeated. "We need you back. We need your support." The words hung in the air. My support. The same support they had rejected for years. I closed my eyes for a moment, forcing down the rush of emotions threatening to choke me. They thought this was okay. They thought they could throw me away when it was convenient and come crawling back when they needed something. It was almost laughable. I let out a bitter chuckle. "You're serious?" I said, unable to hide the disbelief in my voice. "You really think I'll come back and help you after everything?" Another long pause. Then, "Please don't do this," she pleaded. "We know we messed up, but we're your family. You can't just leave us like this." And there it was. The guilt trip. I clenched my jaw. "You never cared about me when I needed you," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed anger. "You were too busy with your golden child. You let me disappear. You told me you'd be better off without me." I paused, the rage boiling inside me. But I held it in check. I wasn't going to let them see how much they had hurt me. I wasn't going to let them twist this back on me. I didn't know them anything. "No," I said, every word sharp as glass. Another long pause. Then, a new voice. "Please," my sister's voice came through, sounding frantic and panicked. I know I was horrible to you, but I need your help. I messed up, okay? I didn't mean it. I've been trying to fix things, but I don't know what to do anymore." I almost laughed. "Fix things? How did you fix years of pain?" I don't want your apologies, I said coldly. And I don't owe you my money or my help. But please, just... I cut her off. No. A shaky breath from the other end. You should have thought about this before you kicked me out of your lives. Silence. Then, I hung up. I set the phone down, my heart racing. But the adrenaline wasn't just from anger. It was from satisfaction. The satisfaction of knowing that. After years of silence, of pretending I didn't exist, they needed me, but I didn't need them. I stood up, pacing the room, letting the reality of the situation sink in. They weren't calling because they missed me. They weren't calling because they wanted to fix things. They were calling because they needed me to fix their mess. And I wasn't going to do it. But deep down, a part of me wanted to make them beg a little longer. Make them squirm. Then, the phone buzzed again. I glanced at the screen. Mom. Again. The same pleading tone in her message. Please. I know we can't undo the past, but we need you. I grinned. They had no idea what they were getting themselves into. The messages kept coming, one after another. At first, they were pleading. Mom, Emma, please, we're family. Don't do this. Sister, I know I messed up, but I'm trying. Please, just hear me out. Then, the guilt tripping started. Mom, you think this is easy for us? You think we enjoy begging our own daughter for help? Sister, I don't deserve this. You're punishing me for something I can't undo. But I've changed. I swear. And when that didn't work, the anger followed. Mom, you're acting selfish. We gave you everything, and this is how you treat us. Sister, I guess success made you heartless. Fine. Forget we exist. Mom, we raised you, Emma. We sacrificed for you. And this is how you repay us. Sacrificed? I let out a bitter laugh. They had never sacrificed anything for me. I had spent my entire life being the afterthought, the one who had to earn her place in a family that never truly wanted her. And now, suddenly, I was important? Because they needed something. Not because they loved me. Not because they missed me. Because I had something they wanted. And that's when I realized I wasn't going to ignore them. I wasn't going to block them and walk away. No, I was going to make them feel it. Every ounce of pain they put me through. It was time to make them understand what it felt like to be invisible, to be discarded, to be a last resort. I didn't respond right away. I let them stew, let the panic settle in. Then, just when they were starting to crumble under the silence, I answered, but I didn't make it easy. Me, what exactly do you want from me? The response was instant. Mom, I told you, sweetie. We're struggling. Your sister's tuition is due, and we have bills we can't pay. We need your support. I smiled. They still didn't get it. They still thought I was the same girl who had left quietly. The one who had bit her tongue and obeyed because she was too afraid of losing the scraps of affection they threw her way. I wasn't her anymore. Me, you need my support? That's funny, because I seem to remember a time when you told me you'd be happier without me. Mom, Emma, please. That was years ago. We were upset. We didn't mean it. Me, you sounded pretty certain at the time. Silence. Then, Mom, you can't seriously be holding a grudge over that. A grudge? I almost laughed. They really thought this was about some single moment of cruelty. As if it wasn't years of being overlooked, mistreated, and discarded. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the messages. They were desperate. They needed me to fold. They needed me to slip back into my old role, the giver, the one who would sacrifice everything just for the hope of earning their love. But I wasn't playing by their rules anymore. Me, I don't owe you anything. Mom, we're family. Me. So? I could almost hear her stunned silence through the phone. Because for the first time, I wasn't letting the word family be a free pass for mistreatment. For once, I was putting myself first. And that terrified them. The messages came in waves. First, anger. Mom, I can't believe you're being this cruel. You think money makes you better than us. Sister, I always knew you'd change if you ever got a little success. You're just proving me right. Then, manipulation. Mom, you don't understand. Emma, we're not asking for much. Just a little help to get us through this rough patch. Then we won't bother you again. I rolled my eyes. They really thought I was that stupid. Me? You won't bother me again? You sure? Because the last time I checked, you never called until you needed something. Mom, that's not true. Me, when's my birthday? Silence. I waited. Nothing. Then, finally, Mom, Emma, that's not fair. I smirked. It was more than fair. I had spent years trying to earn their love. And now, they were trying to earn my money. And unlike me, they were failing. After a full day of silence, I figured they had finally given up. But then, At 7 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A new message from Mom. Mom, I need to talk to you. This isn't just about money. I frowned. This was different. Before, it was all about pleading, demanding, guilt-tripping. But this sounded almost genuine. I hesitated for a second, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then, finally, I responded. Me, talk. A few minutes passed. Then, Mom, I know we messed up. We messed up bad. But I'm asking you as a mother to come home. I need you. We need you. Please don't leave us like this. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. I actually considered calling her back. Maybe she was serious. Maybe she had changed. But then, I remembered everything. The insults. The neglect. The way they had thrown me away the moment I wasn't useful to them. And just like that, the moment of hesitation was gone. I took a deep breath. Then, I typed my final response. Me, you had your chance. I'm done. I had sinned. And something inside me cracked. Because for the first time, I wasn't fighting for their approval. I wasn't seeking their validation. I was just free. But I should have known. This wasn't over. Because the next evening, just as I was settling in for the night, there was a knock at my door. I frowned, my stomach tightening. I stood up, walked over, and peered through the peephole. And my blood ran cold. They were here? I stood frozen, staring through the peephole. They were here? My mother, my father, my sister. All three of them stood outside my door, looking exhausted, desperate, and uninvited. My pulse hammered. I hadn't seen them in over a year. And now, they had tracked me down, standing on my doorstep like they had every right to be here. A part of me, the old me, would have panicked. But that girl was gone. I took a slow breath, steadied myself, and then I opened the door. I didn't step aside. I didn't invite them in. I just stood there, arms crossed, blocking the doorway. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice cold and steady. My mother was the first to speak. Emma, please, she whispered, her voice trembling. Just hear us out. I didn't respond. I just stared at them, letting the silence stretch until she squirmed. My father cleared his throat. We know things have been difficult, but we wanted to talk in person. That's all. Difficult? I almost laughed. I leaned against the doorframe, raising an eyebrow. You had a phone, I said. You didn't need to show up here. My sister shifted uncomfortably. She hadn't said a word yet. I turned my attention to her. What? You don't have anything to say? Her eyes flickered up to meet mine, and for the first time in my life, she looked small. Emma, she hesitated. I didn't mean. I cut her off. No, I said flatly. You don't get to say that. She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She had spent years blaming me for every mistake in her life. And now, suddenly, she was struggling to find the right words. Too late. My mother tried again. Emma, we're not here to fight. We're here because we need you. I scoffed. Yeah, I got that part. She exhaled shakily. We're losing the house. I blinked. I hadn't expected that. And your sister, she hesitated, glancing toward my father. She got into college, but she can't afford tuition. We have no way to help her. I stayed silent. We tried everything, my father chimed in. Loans, selling things, nothing's enough. We're drowning, Emma. I tilted my head. And you thought I would fix it? They didn't answer. I let out a humorless laugh. Unbelievable, I muttered. They weren't here because they wanted me back. They weren't here because they finally realized how they treated me. They were here because they were out of options. And that's when I felt it, Elle. Not anger, not sadness, not even satisfaction. Just emptiness. Because I realized that if their lives had been fine, I still wouldn't exist to them. You don't get to do this, I said finally. Do what? My mother asked, her voice fragile. You don't get to treat me like I'm nothing for years and then suddenly remember I exist when you need something. My sister finally snapped. It's not like that, Emma. She burst out. You don't get it. You've had it easy. I actually laughed. I've had it easy? I repeated. That's rich, coming from you. You don't know what we've been through. She shot back. Oh, you mean having to actually deal with your own problems instead of blaming me? I said. That must be so hard. Her face flushed red, but she had nothing to say, because we both knew I was right. Emma, please, my mother whispered, her voice shaking now. We're family. You can't just turn your back on us. I held her gaze for a long time. You turned your back on me first, I said quietly. Her eyes widened slightly, and for the first time, I saw something behind them that almost looked like fear. Good. You told me you'd be happier without me, I continued. You pushed me out and didn't look back. Not once. She opened her mouth, but I shook my head. You only remembered me when you needed something. Silence. I turned to my sister. You never cared about me until you realized I was the only one who could save you. Her lips parted, but I wasn't done. And you? I turned to my father. You stood there and let it happen. He looked away. You don't deserve me, I said finally. And then I stepped back and closed the door. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then, knock, knock, knock. Emma, please, my mother cried. Her voice muffled through the door. I didn't answer. Don't do this. Nothing. I stood there, my hands clenched into fists. I expected to feel something. Guilt, regret, doubt. But all I felt was relief. Because I had finally chosen myself. The knocking eventually stopped. And just like that, they were gone. For good. Or so I thought. Because the next morning, I woke up to a headline with my name in it. And I realized they weren't done with me yet. The next morning, I woke up to the buzzing of my phone. At first, I ignored it. After last night's confrontation, I had no intention of entertaining their drama anymore. But then, I noticed something strange. My notifications weren't from them. They were from everyone else. I frowned, reaching for my phone. My screen was flooded with messages. Texts from old classmates, people I hadn't spoken to in years. DMs from random strangers. Missed calls from unknown numbers. And then, I saw it. A news article, with my name in the headline. My stomach twisted as I clicked on the link. And right there, splashed across the screen, was a sob story interview. About me. Or rather, about how I had abandoned my struggling family despite my success. My mother had done it. She had gone to the media. She painted herself as the heartbroken mother, begging for help. Our daughter became rich and forgot about us, she claimed. We did everything for her, and now she won't even pick up the phone. Everything for me? They had treated me like a burden my entire life. But that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part was the comments section. Thousands of people weighing in on my life. Strangers who didn't know me but had already decided I was a horrible person. Imagine being so selfish that you'd let your own mother go homeless. Money changes people. Clearly, she forgot where she came from. I bet she was always ungrateful. Some people don't deserve family. I wanted to scream. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know what it was like to grow up as an afterthought, to be treated like a convenience until you stopped being useful. And now, the world was on their side. I scrolled further, my heart pounding. My sister had chimed in, too. I just wanted my big sister back, she wrote in her statement. I made mistakes, but I thought family forgives. I never thought she'd cut us off like this. I gritted my teeth. I had given them everything. And the moment I stopped, they turned me into the villain. I locked my phone and threw it onto the bed. I needed to breathe. I paced the room, hands clenched into fists. What did they think this would do? That I'd break down and come running back? That I'd send them money just to shut them up? They underestimated me. I wasn't scared of them anymore. And if they wanted a war, they were going to get one. I sat down, opened my laptop, and started typing. I wasn't going to play defense. I was going to end this. Step 1. Expose the truth. I gathered every screenshot, every bank transfer, every message proving that I had supported them for years. I drafted a statement, not an emotional rant, not an apology, just facts. Since my family has decided to share their side of the story, here's mine. I was never their golden child. I was the one who worked 3 jobs to escape. I was the one who paid their bills while they ridiculed me behind my back. I was the one they told, we'd be happier without you. And when I finally listened, they turned me into a villain. I attached receipts. Let the world see how they had used me. Let the world know the real story. And then, I posted it. It took minutes for the post to explode. At first, the same people who had called me selfish tried to double down. There are 2 sides to every story. You still could have helped them. But then, people actually read what I posted, and the tide shifted. Wait, her family literally admitted to treating her like a wallet. The "we'd be happier without you" part? That sealed it for me. Her mother tried to manipulate the media, and it backfired. The support poured in. People defended me. They called out my family. They dragged my mother for using the media to guilt-trip me. And then, the real victory came. The news outlet that originally published the sob story, they retracted it. We have since learned new information regarding this case and regret not verifying certain claims before publication. In other words, they got caught. My mother had thought she could control the narrative, but she forgot. I wasn't silent anymore. That night, I got one last message. It was from my mother. "Mom, you didn't have to humiliate us." I stared at the screen, a slow smirk curling on my lips. "Neither did you." I hit block, and for the first time in my life, I felt at peace. For the first time in my life, I had one. The internet had turned on them. Their attempt to paint me as a cold-hearted monster had backfired spectacularly. The article was retracted. The sympathy they had weaponized vanished overnight. And I thought, finally, this is over. I was wrong. Because 2 days later, there was another knock at my door. I froze. The last time they had shown up, I had sent them away broken and humiliated. Surely, they wouldn't try again, would they? I took a slow, steady breath and walked to the door. I peeked through the peephole, and my blood ran cold. It wasn't just my mother this time. It was my entire family. Aunt, uncle, cousins. They had brought backup. This wasn't a conversation. This was an ambush. I opened the door just enough to see them. "What do you want?" My voice was calm, cold, controlled. My aunt stepped forward first, hands raised like she was about to negotiate a hostage situation. "Sweetheart, we just want to talk." "We already talked," I said flatly. "Not properly," my mother interjected, her eyes pleading. "Please, let us come in." I almost laughed. "Why? So you can try to manipulate me in person?" A muscle in my mother's jaw twitched. "Emma, you made this worse than it had to be," she said, her voice sharper now. "You embarrassed us." "I embarrassed them?" I clenched my jaw. "You went to the media," I shot back. "I just defended myself." My father, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "You ruined our reputation. You ruined mine first." Silence. I stared them down. "You came here thinking what?" I asked. "That if enough of you showed up, I'd magically change my mind? That I'd forget everything you put me through?" My sister, standing off to the side, shifted nervously. She looked like she wanted to speak, but didn't know how. Too late for regrets. "We just want to fix this," my aunt tried again. "There's nothing to fix," I said. "You don't want to fix our relationship. You want me to fix your problems. There's a difference." They had nothing to say to that, because they knew I was right. Then, my mother played her final card. "You're really going to abandon your own family?" she asked. Just like that? Abandon. As if I had left them. As if they hadn't thrown me away first. "I didn't abandon you," I said quietly. "You abandoned me a long time ago. I just finally listened." Her face twisted. She had lost. They all had. But she couldn't stand to admit it. So she did what people like her always do. She went for the last resort. The guilt trip. "One day, you're going to regret this," she said. "You'll come back, and we won't be here." I exhaled slowly, letting her words settle. Then, I smiled. "Good," I said, and I shut the door. I stood there, hands trembling, not with fear, not with anger, but with relief. They were gone. For the first time, I had shut them out completely. I heard them murmuring outside for a few more minutes. Then, footsteps. They left. And just like that, it was over. For real this time. I wasn't their puppet anymore. I wasn't their ATM. I wasn't their backup plan. I was free, and it felt better than I ever imagined. I didn't check my phone for hours. I didn't need to. I knew what the final confrontation had meant. They were done. And so was I. No more texts. No more guilt trips. No more manipulative sob stories. For years, I had been their fallback plan. Their invisible servant. The expendable one. Now, I was just gone. And the best part? I didn't miss them. Not even a little. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. No anxiety. No dread. No waiting for the next emotional bomb to drop. I checked my phone, half expecting another desperate message. But nothing. Not from them, anyway. Instead, my inbox was full of messages from friends, clients, and even strangers who had seen my story unfold. I just wanted to say you're an inspiration. So many of us have toxic families, but we never get out. I was on the fence about cutting off my parents, but after reading your post, I finally did it. Thank you. Your strength gave me the push I needed. You deserve your peace. I blinked, rereading the messages. I had been so focused on surviving that I hadn't realized something important. By choosing myself, I had shown others that they could, too. And that was worth more than anything my family could have ever given me. Over the next few weeks, I kept tabs on them from a distance. Not because I cared, I didn't, but because I was curious. How do people like them survive without someone to carry them? The answer? They don't. The internet never forgets. And after their failed attempt to publicly shame me, they became the joke. Their fake sob story had been exposed. Their real character? Laid bare for the world to see. No more pity. No more handouts. No more victim card. They had built their lives on manipulating others. And when that stopped working, everything crumbled. I wasn't surprised when I heard that my sister had dropped out of college. I wasn't surprised when I learned my parents had moved into a smaller house. But I was surprised when I realized something. I didn't feel anything about it. No anger. No satisfaction. No desire to rub it in. Just indifference. Because they weren't my problem anymore. A year passed. A full year of no contact. And in that time, my life flourished. My business exploded. I expanded into new ventures. I traveled, met people who actually valued me. I built real friendships, ones not based on obligation or blood. And one night, while standing on the balcony of my high-rise apartment, looking out at the city lights, it hit me. I won. Not in a revenge way. Not in a look-at-me-now way. I won because I was free. Free from their expectations. Free from their control. Free from the cycle of give, and get nothing in return. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting for them to come back. I wasn't bracing for the next fight. I wasn't proving anything to anyone. I was just living. And that was the sweetest victory of all.